All right, round two might be coming to an end, boys and girls, but that doesn't mean the excitement is. I'm here today with our good friend and co-host, Mr. Brendan Riley.
Hey, Rob, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you for asking, Mr. Brendo. But I'm going to tell you that this excitement is too exciting. I can't contain it all.
I am out of control. Out of control.
We need help. Who could we get?
How about our friend Jason?
Jason Brooks.
Hello, Rob. Hello, Brendan. It is great to be here tonight.
Thank you for joining us. Jason, you did great helping us out with that big bout between Spirit Island and its opponent, Gaia Project.
Gaia Project!
And we're bringing you in here for another doozy. We've got today none other than Great Western Trail versus Through the Ages.
You know, I'm really glad that we have Jason here for this because both of these games have established themselves as titans in the field. You might say that they have built legacies for themselves.
Ha ha! They have Brookspun together quite a legacy. Like Jason and the Argonauts. Oh, someone stop me.
So, Jason, which of these games do you think killed their kids like Medea?
I thought it was interesting that Tyler Perry was in the Star Trek movie. We're getting off track.
Well, I'm going to put us back on track, Rob, and I'm excited to talk about Great Western Trail. You know, Alexander Pfister is somebody who's been in the spotlight for a while, but I think he really made his mark in the board game community, Board Game Geek particularly, with Great Western Trail. It sort of marked the new era of Pfister, in which he brought all sorts of different interesting mechanisms together. He brought a theme that people really enjoy. It's not a very widely used theme, the Western. You've seen a lot since that game. But, you know, he has deck building. He's got a sort of large board-sized rondel. There are lots of different choices to make throughout the game. You know, I think a lot of people are seeing this as going to be a cakewalk for Great Western Trail.
Oh, I think those people better watch out because if he just looks over his shoulder, he's going to see that there's someone ready to keep him in check in the form of one Vlada Chvátil. Vlada Chvátil is in some regards the exact opposite in that this is a man who comes here with a pedigree. This is a man who's shown that he can design games coming at you from all corners. You need a party game? Boom, Chvátil. You need to play a game that's going to take you 7 hours just to learn? Boom, Mage Knight. You need a game that's just going to scratch your itch for a thinky brain burner? Boom, right there, Through the Ages, ending the second round here, coming up against Great Western Trails. I tell you, this is another one that there's just no way to call it from here.
Jason, what are your thoughts on Through the Ages?
Through the Ages was one of my first loves. Don't tell my wife. Back when I got into the hobby, that was one of the first ones to hit my table and has hit my table dozens and dozens of times since. There's just something about starting off in the nascent area of history and starting to build yourself out as civilization over the course of hundreds, if not thousands of years, and being able to reflect on that story at the end of the game, seeing how you grew from absolutely nothing to this massive bit of provenance in the future.
Do you think the fact that Through the Ages could conceivably encompass the time frame in which Great Western Trail takes place is going to serve to help or hinder it? Do you think its breadth is going to consume it, or do you think its lack of specificity is going to handicap it?
I think that's one of the things that Great Western Trail really has going through it is its thematic element. I mean, it takes you into the early 19th century and dives deep into it as you start to get a feel for what it's like to be one of those old Westerners out there on that trail. And I don't know, there's something special about that thematic element of the game that if that's an area that appeals to you, which is one that appeals to me, then that might be able to sway the voters' hearts in that direction.
You know, speaking from the other side of the coin, though, I think you made a good point that part of what Through the Ages does is it gives you this gigantic expanse, and frankly, the choices that you get allow for some really amusing and hilarious ideas about what your culture might be. Maybe you dive heavy into theaters, so you build all these theaters and libraries, and you have your William Shakespeare's and your Charlie Chaplin's to score points off of those, or maybe you go crazy with religion and military and you got Joan of Arc. The way that the different technologies come out, you can even have sort of bizarre combinations where you've got James Cook leading your exploration and you have space travel at the same time. Great Western Trail, you don't have any Westworld robots, so maybe Pfister missed a trick there.
Have you heard the talk of the expansion?
I don't know. Is there a Westworld expansion? That'd be pretty great.
I'm looking at the bracket here, and there's really no other representation of this particular time period in the bracket. So we're going to find out if this is a niche or if this is, something that could have maybe gotten in the way of this game succeeding. I thought it was a really interesting matchup between Great Western Trail and A Feast for Odin last round, where those settings are both ones that have such devoted fan bases. I think that it was possible in that situation that you could have just had people deciding between, well, I like Vikings or I like the Old West.
Another thing to consider there is, do I want to play a game for 90 minutes or 4 hours? One of the downsides to A Feast for Odin is you put it on the table, it's going to be there for lunch and dinner. I think part of the reason people like Pfister's designs is not only are they intricate and thoughtful, they're also restrained enough that with experienced players, you're going to play in an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours for a learning game. And that might be a problem that Through the Ages faces as well.
Yeah, we've talked about this time and time again in the bracket. Back when we were talking to Nick about Mage Knight, that's a game that you almost don't even want to take out of the box if you know that you're going to have to use the table again because you want to get a couple plays out of just setting it up. And Through the Ages maybe isn't suffering from that to the same extent, but Vlada still knows that he's going to be able to take a little bit of your time there.
Yeah, I don't know. I, for one, when I set up Through the Ages, that setup process just even gets me giddy. I think it's the definition of a cube pusher when I think about all those yellow, blue, white, and red cubes pouring out all over my player mat and the board. I wish they had some more thematic feel to them and some more elegance, but gosh darn it, once they're pouring it on the table, I know I'm in for hours and hours of brain strategy, but ultimate fun along that way. So while it may not look like much when you think about the components, they really do translate into fantastic gameplay.
No question there.
And I think the river of cards that flows across the top of the board, as you watch the achievements come down or the technologies come down and you're trying to wrestle with, do I need to spend an extra action to take something further up the line, or can I let it ride around and then your opponent snatches it out from under you? And but Great Western Trail has those same decisions. Am I going to build this outpost now, or am I going to head on down the line to try to grab something later? And then someone else builds that outpost and now you got to pay them a tax every time you go by. Both games have a lot of really crunchy decisions that allow for interesting player interaction.
No doubt.
I love it. Well, one thing we haven't talked about yet is box art. Both of these games have crowds of people staring sort of grumpily at you from the cover of the box.
I feel judged. Well, I don't think that this is something that's going to sway anyone in the voting, although who am I to say? But it's interesting. This is not Vlada Chvátil's only time appearing here in the second round, but it's his last chance to make it through to the third because Castles of Burgundy took him out earlier in round 2.
Man, can you imagine Vlada Chvátil first falls to Feld and then to Pfister? He's going to have a lot of resentment for those F
Well, and if you remember back to the last bracket, it was Vlada up against Netrunner in the final showdown with code names that time.
That's right.
Once again, the breadth of this man's design oeuvre is incredible.
As is the word oeuvre.
I think the big question the voters got to ask is, do they think Vlada is the Meryl Streep of the bracket here? Always nominated, never winning.
Have you seen his legs, though?
Objectifying game designers. All right, anything else to add, Jason?
The only other thing I have to add is that if you were to ask my opinion, I've got a way that deep theme and great strategy of Great Western Trail against the incredible gameplay and breadth of civilization building of Through the Ages. My money's going to be on the longer time span. I'm going to go with Through the Ages.
It's a hard choice, but I've got to respect your decision there. And speaking of decisions, this bout will be decided by you going, my good listener, to @GameFightShow on Twitter.
@GameFightShow. So fun to say.
Let your voice be heard, my beautiful nerd. Oh, there's the gong, and that tells us that it's time to throw to Eleanor with the results for yesterday's showdown.
All right, it's Eleanor with your results. 7th seed Twilight Struggle did go gentle into that good night, as 3rd seed Terraforming Mars continued to turn up the heat on the March Mayhem bracket. That's all for today. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you, Brendan. And especially thank you, Jason, for your expert commentary on this very difficult and exciting bout.
Thank you both. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Brendan. This has been an absolute pleasure.
I hope you'll come back again to help us parse some more of the hot heat that's coming down here in the bracket. But for now, I'm going to have to sign off. This is Rob. I'm here with
Brendan.
Together with
Jason.
And we all say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.